Hi guys, this is the first round of interviews that I'm doing for 240 days. The idea is I'm sharing my fundraising journey every week, but what I really want to do is share the journeys of founders who have been there and done it, have closed around, especially in this current climate, which has been quite challenging for founders to close in, so that you can benefit and learn from their experiences too. Today, I'm kicking off with our first ever interview with Millie and Catherine from yesterday. They have built a recruitment product that streamlines the recruitment process by automating candidate screening using AI and insights from hiring psychology. So they've closed a pre-seed round 6 months ago, and they're now running pilots before they start launching publicly. So we're going to learn from their experiences today. So first, sorry guys, I was going to say thank you for joining me. It's really great to have you here today.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, that's fine, but it would be great if you could both start by telling us a bit about, why you started yesterday and maybe a bit about like your career history as well, how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both met actually in an accelerator program. So we wanted to have been very active in the startup space. I'll let Kat touch on her background in a second, but we both had been working in fast-paced startup world, myself more so on the e-commerce side of things, and marketing and also recruitment. And then from there, we met in an accelerator program. We were in rapid iteration phase of test, get feedback, and try and ascertain what problem we wanted to solve. So we pretty quickly just determined that we wanted to help streamline the hiring process. We both had done extensive hiring in our careers, me being a headhunter and Kat having grown huge teams in fast-growing startups. So that was really, I guess, where we narrowed down our focus quite quickly. And then from there, we went into really heavy validation phase of we ended up talking to over 200 hiring managers and recruiters. So that's really how we sort of started with just a generalized problem and then jumped into solution mode after we got enough intel. But yeah, my background was really I started a small business when I was straight out of uni, an e-commerce business. It was actually a skincare business, which completely failed. But it was a great learning experience, and that really ignited my passion for business, startups, etc. So that just, been working in my own businesses since I left uni. So that was sort of how I came to be. But yeah, Kat, I'll let you jump in and explain your background.
Yeah, I think for me, slightly similar, but also different. Similar in the case that I've grown up delving into all different sorts of businesses. I come from a traditional marketing background, so anything in the marketing or sales stratosphere, I've tried, from door knocking, telemarketing to actually handing out flyers in retail stores. And then I jumped into the digital space and just tried to learn everything within that. I did start a coffee shop, a Vietnamese eatery. I also started a marketing agency. Ended up actually relocating to London and spent 5 good years in the fintech crypto scene. Off the back of that, I think we really experienced the magnitude of hiring, particularly for a global company. And so I think it's just sort of been ringing in my ear for a long time. And so when I met up with Millie and Antler, we were sort of just sharing challenges, and we came across the problem in hiring in particular, and just the general admin that exists in recruitment. And I think we found common ground there. And just the tech space, especially in AI, we just saw that there was an opportunity to really tackle it in a way that hasn't been looked at before. So yeah, we've been looking at it from a new, fresh lens. I think being in the tech space that's really predominantly grown by tech bros is very about getting a product up, spitting it, and sort of like selling it. We wanted to take a more nuanced approach to just the smaller details that, you know, we all really want to pay particular attention to. And so we've been focused on that. We've got a MVP up and running, and we're really just trying to test some real life use cases through it to make sure that it's adding value before we, you know, put up the sales sign and go, hey, buy here, you know. That will come eventually, but we want to make sure that when they get through the door, they're going to stay.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. You want to make sure that it's a sticky product, and that's the best way to do it. But I love that both of you have a really colourful career history. So I'll ask you this one at a time. But you know, Millie, you mentioned that you run a small business, even though it's failed. You know, you did that straight out of university, which is an incredible achievement. You've worked in marketing, headhunting, co-founded a business in the past. How do you think all of that experience prepared you for yesterday and for fundraising?
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I went down the path I did, and I'm actually really grateful that that first business failed. I think I put my name all over it. It was a really terrible product, like I'll be the first to admit that. And I really think that that built a lot of resilience for what was to come in my career. And then also, really, that's the worst case scenario. So I sort of knew that from there I needed to take a step back and really learn from people in the industries that I wanted to work with. I had awesome mentors. So I was, I guess, really proactive in determining where I wanted to focus my career. I got a part-time job whereby I could learn on the go, and then also hone my skills on the side. And then from there, having launched our own marketing agency, that was just pure perfection for me, whereby I could learn looking at other people's businesses, generating income, but also refining and learning sales strategies and all the sort of different facets of running a small business that I do think you can come in very unprepared in the fundraising space and as a startup founder, whereby you don't actually know all the elements that go into running a business. It's not just a product, it's, you know, accounting, it's everything. And I think without having all of these little nuggets of different sort of random bits and bobs of my career and running our own businesses, I do think that that's really prepared me for now. But yeah, that's not to say it hasn't been pretty disappointing and up and down. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot now. So yeah, I'm really excited.
No, that's great to hear. And Catherine, I ask you the same question. You know, you spent ample time in marketing. You've been like head of content, head of community, a CMO, founded several businesses. Like, how did that experience prepare you for fundraising as well?
Yeah, I think the more mistakes you make, the more it allows you to know a little bit about what you don't want and what you want to see out of your businesses. I think thankfully in my latest role, I jumped in, told myself that it would be a sabbatical, didn't realize that it would be half a decade that I spent with them. And, you know, I joined when there were about 70 people and I left when, you know, we scaled the business to about 1,300. And so that has been an invaluable lesson for me to see how to scale a business and what not to do. I think we sort of saw different phases of the business grow. You know, you sort of start small, everyone's very excited, same mission, same values, same culture, and then it gets to a place where, wow, okay, there's different teams, there's middle management here, there's like different compliance, we go global, and there's just like different cultural shifts where they really have to scale. And so I think I really value the early stages of a business where they're still trying to put all the ideas together. And I have a few lessons under my belt on, you know, what I'd like to see within my businesses so that I could drive a culture that, you know, I can really be proud of.
Yeah, I mean oh, sorry, Millie, go ahead.
Sorry, just to jump in on that as well, Kat has a lot more experience than me, and I think like from my perspective, it's amazing getting to leverage her knowledge of, you know, scaling a massive company. That's definitely not something that I have done, and I also haven't had a corporate career. So, you know, having that sort of ability to fill in the gaps with each other's experience as well has really enabled us to sort of form a more well-rounded team as well. And particularly from a fundraising perspective, that those are the sort of nitty-gritty elements that investors really do delve into to see that you do have the well-versed experience for the team.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And actually, I'll come back to investor expectations as well, because it'll be really interesting to hear, you know, the different things that you both came across whilst you were raising. But you mentioned earlier you met through Antler's program. So how did that experience influence the way that you built yesterday and your fundraising process?
Yeah, you want to go, Millie, or?
Yeah, sure. I think Antler was an amazing experience. We both went into it with very little expectations. We'll be completely transparent in that regard. I hadn't even listened to the Ask Me Anything before I started. I arrived on day one and didn't even know that I needed to have a co-founder. So it was a pretty crazy experience, but I think we did actually have mutual connections, Kat and I, so that really built a really strong bond between us. But I would say that the overall accelerator experience significantly changes how you approach funding. You've got basically a really nice cocoon of support. You've got basically a team behind you, but you've also got, I guess, the expectations that you're going to adapt to their feedback. So that was something that we actually saw, Kat and I, looking at other people in the program and people that have come before us and after us, is how well you can adapt to the VC's feedback, because they are working with you every single week, is really paramount to how successful you will be, because they want to see that, okay, you can take their feedback on board. You're not, I guess, super attached to your idea, and you've got these preconceived ideas about what you're going to do, and, you know, you've come to the program having worked on something for years. Some people arrive with an idea that they've had for over 10 years. So they were really indebted to what they wanted to do and how they wanted to deliver that. So we really learned to be very, very adaptable and change on the go as well. And also an element of how can we, I guess, appease what they're looking for whilst also staying true to what we wanted to build in terms of a business.
No, that makes a lot of sense, especially given the purpose of an accelerator is for them to offer you that support and nudge you in the right direction. Feedback is a huge part of that process, and it'd be great to know how you've managed feedback with each other as co-founders. That's one of the things that kind of either strengthens or kills a relationship. So how have you two managed that with each other through both like Antler's process and through fundraising?
I think we're still working through that. We are very good at saying sorry when we pick up the phone and say hi. And so Millie in particular was like, sorry to call you. I was like, Millie, we've spoken about this. Sorry is not a greeting. But I think through the experience of having our own businesses before and knowing that you just need to have it or hear it objectively, because we're working towards the same goal, we've got the right intentions, and what we try and do is try and come to an agreement. What's really been helpful over the past, I think, 2 months of Millie being in Europe was that we've been on completely different time zones. So when it's my end of day, she's only waking up. And so what we've been starting is we put together an end of day summary where we sort of like summarize what we've been working on. It includes a whole list of like side commentaries of like how we're feeling about the day, what we're thinking about, all the unanswered questions.
Song of the day.
And yeah, that's really helped us sort of like sit, reflect, read through the whole bunch of text and sort of come back with a more, okay, cool, I've been thinking about this. Here's a rough draft of, say, an email or comms to someone else, and then we sort of hand off, and then the other person always either responds back or finishes it and then sends it off. And that's been a really good workflow. And yeah, I think because we are chatting all the time, either through voice notes or WhatsApp or Slack or the 1,000 other, I guess, like social media channels, we quickly sense when I think like we're not feeling 100% in a particular direction. So we try and talk about it. We probably talk about it a bit too much, but we eventually feel when we're aligning, like, okay, let's go again or restart. That's my experience.
We've been super lucky that it's been easy. Like, I think on my side, it's been really, really easy. We work so well together. And also, I think something that I've been thinking of is we've both worked with our partners. So Kat's husband, they run a business together. I've worked with my partner for 5 years. So I think that the nature of working with a romantic partner, you can be so blunt, even, way too much. So I think that we both have an element of thick skin, that we're not easily offended. And I don't think that it would work in the nature of running a startup with someone who was, not able to take criticism on board. And, there's obviously the right way to deliver that sort of feedback. But yeah, I think that really works quite well. It's almost a sibling-like relationship whereby you can say what you think, and that just makes the overall business run better. But you've also got that underlying respect and trust with one another as well.
Yeah.
We're not all like siblings though.
But I can imagine that having a relationship like that, where you're both able to give each other that constructive feedback, also have the grace to say, oh, they might be having a bad day, is, really helpful when you're going into a process like fundraising. So, what were some of the early decisions that you both made together about the type of investors or the type of funding that you wanted to look for, and also how much you wanted to raise?
I think it's a hard one because it's an ongoing conversation. Half of it is truthfully the type of conversations that we're having and the feedback that we're getting. And in the current climate, hiring as well as AI is changing every day. And so each week it might be a pivot in a slight strategic direction, or I guess like the audience. We started in the Antler program with a very strong view that we wanted to focus on small businesses because everything has been very enterprise heavy. After going through that research and talking to a lot of people, we found an opportunity with recruiters. And then leaving Antler, that was in August, we sort of went back to the drawing board, spoke to a whole bunch of people again, and then realized that actually the people that are hiring at scale are the ones that would probably be repeat users of the product. And so we sort of went back and started speaking with hiring managers internally to look at that. And now I think we're starting to realize the long sales cycle as well as the, I guess, the magnitude of processes and teams that we probably need to have in place to be able to actually service bigger companies. And so from a audience perspective, we're still trying to figure out. From fundraising, I think, again, we need to be cognizant of the market at the moment and trying to be open to, what type of, we're looking for the right partners that are willing to be with us in the long term. If it's just about signing up a check, then, it's easier to knock on doors and be like, hey, like, please give me money. I'm like, going to be able to, I think it's much easier to swing that sort of fundraising if we're open to any kind of money, which we're not.
Yeah.
And I think also Antler set a really great standard for us whereby we utilize the support available to us. And I think that's something that has been quite interesting to see, the way in which different people, different types of personalities approach that sort of support. And I think, I was going to say that saying about the loudest bird gets the worm or something like that. But basically, I do think like the squeaky wheel. I do think that, utilizing that support available to you, I think going forward in our future raises, I would expect a similar level of support in return for that equity. I do think it has to be approached with a perspective of what am I actually getting for giving away that equity, other than just cash, because it's not just about the money. It's, whole layer of additional investment is in you as a person and you as a business. So yeah, I think we've been pretty aligned on that sort of future direction, and we've really had no issue with strategic decisions together.
No, that's fair. And also, like you said, not all money is good money. So it's really important to make those decisions at the beginning so that the fundraise now and any other fundraisers that you do in the future kind of like operate in a way that you would like them to, in terms of you having the right people on board and having that support. It sounds like Antler was a great place to start for the two of you in terms of getting the support that you needed. But Millie, you mentioned earlier before we started speaking that you and your partner just came back from Europe. He's also a startup founder. He was raising in Europe, and you spent a few months out there. So what did you learn from, seeing his experience of raising in that climate?
Yeah, it was really interesting. There was a few things that I noticed overall. I think Kat and I, being two female founders who don't have technical backgrounds, outside of Antler, we spoke to many other investors as well, both before Antler and during the Antler process and after the Antler process, and that was something that was continually drilled into us, concerns around our technical capability and actually our ability to deliver the business. And I can say, being in an Airbnb with my partner for 3 months and listening to him do countless calls with investors, that was never even a concern for a second. So I do think that there is something there from a gender perspective, and I know that that's sentiment that's really widely known in the industry. It's very male dominated, and there is, I guess, a level of concern around at least our ability to execute. So that was quite interesting. But additionally, I'd say because it was a later stage fundraise to when we raised, there is definitely a shift in the environment. For example, what they were hearing in terms of what they wanted for traction was much more significant than when we were raising 6 months ago. Like, for example, even, people wanting paying customers at, pre-seed. So, which was quite astounding. We were pre-seed, truly pre-seed, free product, very early idea with just some minimal validation and in the form of letters of intent. So yeah, that was really interesting to see how that's changed in such a short period of time. But yeah, and also I'd say definitely the concerns around technical ability was quite different. So yeah.
No, that's really interesting to hear. And given the two of you raised in Australia, did you see, there was a difference between what European investors were expecting versus Australian? It'll be also good to get both of your perspectives on what the Australian market felt like when you were having those conversations 5-6 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll speak to the European versus Australia, and then Kat can talk to what it was like when we were raising. In Europe, what I believed to be true is that the valuations are a lot higher than in Australia. And additionally, my partner had a lot of pushback on being based in Australia and having a European presence, which is for Australian companies, they want you to be based in Europe. For them, that is great. If you are, your primary market is the UK, that's fantastic because it's a way bigger market. Whereas obviously having founders based in different countries was a big concern as well. So I would say Australia, just given the size, they're very much following what Europe and the UK are doing. So yeah, I can definitely see how you've got the whole world at your fingertips in Europe. So it's definitely a different scene. But yeah, they really want you pushing overseas as much as possible.
Oh, that's so interesting. And yeah, Kat, if you can give us a bit of insight on what that experience was like with raising with Australian investors.
Yeah, I think it's hard when Australia's a bubble, and it's also a nanny state. You sort of have to live here to probably understand the magnitude of what that means. If we go back to like COVID times, not to derail too much, like we were in lockdown for a very long time. No one could get into the country, even now, and people couldn't get into the country. And so what we see here is they're speaking with a smaller group of people. There's even when I guess we're raising in a space where we fall under the HR bucket, and we also fall into, I guess, like recruitment tech. So if there's anything remotely within that corner, it's almost like, oh, okay, cool, it's a conflict. Whereas like if you sort of open up the spectrum of understanding the product scope of what we're actually tackling and what the problem we're solving for, there's room for about 25 different, shelf products coming out of Australia. But because we're still so early in that scene, it's hard to differentiate, and there's key, I guess, like businesses that are also raising that may pivot in that area, or they may remotely work in that area, and so it's harder to really delve into that conversation with that here. I think that's probably the main thing that we've been experiencing. My, I guess, experience in Europe as well, I was working for a VC before I left, and we invested globally, and it was a small early stage fund, particularly in the Web3 and crypto market. But the magnitude of, I guess, pitches and things that we get at our desk, we were just a lot more open. I think there's a lot more. I guess it's harder because I was on the other side, but we were able to liaise with different VC partners to be like, hey, have you spoken to these guys? This pitch deck came, like we've spoken. So they do share. There is an agreement in place where they can sort of share a few notes. You can't really say why they've invested and stuff because there's a few rules on being able to influence that. But there's a lot more dialogue happening. I'm not sure if it's very siloed here, but we came out of it one accelerator program, and we know that there are other, I guess, like competitors in the not direct competitors, but indirect competitors within that space that have indirect competitors that are also raising, and so it's been difficult to separate that thread without, like, we're having to justify that, hey, these are 55 reasons why we're different and why we're solving a different problem and why there's space for us, and that I can promise you that we're not even going for the same market, but hey, sorry, it's a bit too close to home, and we'll speak to you, I guess, like further down the track. it's not a complete shutdown, but it is they're cognizant of what they want to share with us or how much they want to know about us.
That's really interesting to hear that there's that kind of, like, say, that bubble where people are kind of assuming, it sounds like they're assuming that your product falls within a realm that it doesn't necessarily. And that might be something that's unique to HR. Actually, it'd be interesting to hear from other founders that are in other industries to see if that affects them too. But it sounds like there have been some challenges along the way with those conversations with investors. So it would be good to know what challenges did the two of you face whilst you were knees deep in the funding round, having these calls, having these meetings. Like, what were the things that you constantly found yourself up against?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the number one challenge for us was around firstly the saturation of HR tech, and secondly not being technical co-founders. So Kat is very technically competent, capable, but she's not a developer. So that was really the main pushback, which we actually weren't sure if we were going to be able to raise at all, given how strongly that was an issue for us. So we ended up bringing on a CTO very early on in the piece. So that appeased a lot of those concerns. But yeah, that was, I think, something that a lot of people find is the case, and even from our discussion earlier. And also, I've had so many calls with people who have come to me and said, "Oh, we're having an issue where we don't have a co-founder. Can you help me and talk through what you guys did and how you went about it from the funding piece?" So yeah, I think we were quite vocal in our, I guess, pushback on the technical piece. So yeah, we definitely have had lots of conversations with people since, and I can see the reason why. It's obviously, development's incredibly expensive, and it's a really important resource. But I do think we're also seeing, a sort of shift with, low code, no code, and the ability of AI tools to help ease those gaps. So I think that's sort of going to become less of an issue. But yeah, that was definitely the main pushback for us. And also, I guess, the saturation piece. Anything else you want to add, Kat?
I think out of that, it was a good lesson to be able to see what they were saying, and really, I think it helped us hone in on our product decision. Even like we doubled down because we were like, actually, like, you're right, there is a lot of saturation, and they're all building the same thing, and we are not that. And so we're now focused on just making sure that we have something to show. So then it's hey, all the naysayers who might have I guess, like, even a thought that we can't build in this space, we're just going to prove that we can, and we'll bump up evaluation by the time we have that, so that you're not taking more of the pie to believe in us, I guess.
I also think, I just want to add, like, for us both, we spoke extensively about, I guess, the magnitude of taking venture capital. Like, we've both bootstrapped our businesses in the past, and we are very scrappy. That's why I think we've been really good at being very mindful of our runway. So I do think, that was something that we really didn't take lightly, and we did actually welcome all of the feedback, all of the criticism, because we wanted to make sure we were taking money in good faith, knowing that we had everything in place to make it as successful as possible, and also that, from a, I guess, personal standpoint, we're not taking on incredible liability that we're going to feel completely unable to deliver. So yeah, we did really, although we pushed back on the technical piece, we completely understood where they were coming from, and I do think, it's really fair pushback. So yeah, it was definitely something that we continually talked about, and what that would mean to take that money, and what that means for, the next few years of our careers, and what have you. So yeah, I think that's something that is a really important piece of the puzzle, that it's actually you're comprehending what this means to actually go down the VC route as well.
And when you had those conversations, for you, what did it mean to make that decision to go for VC money versus, say, like say, bootstrapping or crowdfunding or angel investment?
I guess it really meant for us and for me in particular, I was really committed to making this work. I'm going to give this everything. If we fail, which statistically we're most likely to fail, that's just the facts, we would be, I guess, the most confident that we could do our absolute very best and we are going to make this work. So that was really something that I wanted to be really sure of, and also that I wanted to work with Kat for the next 5-10 years. Because, yeah, that's, at the end of the day, this relationship, if that doesn't work, like that's the number one reason startups fail is co-founder fallout. So, that was really, really important that, we were really mindful that we're basically entering into a marriage. So, yeah.
No, I love that. Co-founder relationships are definitely marriages. I don't think there are enough people that say that or think of it that way, and that is probably why a lot of them don't end up working. But Kat, can you talk me through, what was the most memorable moment of your fundraise? Like, what was that moment where you were like, oh God, this is the best thing?
The best thing, I think. That's a good question. With the Antler process, we had to pitch to an IC. So the format that they go with is you get a strict, I think it was 15 minutes or like 10 minutes, or I can't remember now. Wow. My memory is so terrible. But basically we had like 10 minutes, or they basically will cut you off if you don't finish to present your deck. You get out of the room. And then you get like asked questions for another set period of time. They kick you out of the room. You're waiting in a waiting room for up to half an hour while they have a discussion about you, and they may or may not call you back in for additional questions. So we pitched, we answered the questions, and we're like, whew, that was good. And we're just awkwardly waiting in this like waiting room. And then in the last absolute minute where they could have hung up, they called back. They called us back in and asked us like more grilling questions.
For literally like 30 minutes.
Yeah, and we were like, oh my God. Like, so that initial window was like, hey, that felt really good. It just got immediately shut down to be like, oh my God, they hate us. What are we going to do? We're not going to get it. So when we got the call back to hear the feedback from our pitch and the way we answered the questions, and to hear that, we got majority of those votes, was really a really proud moment, I think, to go through almost like intensive program where every week they're sort of giving you hard feedback to go, hey, these are the things that you should improve on. This is the areas we'd like to see. To be able to go through that and have a win, it's for ourselves as well. I think was able to just park the imposter syndrome just for a little bit and celebrate. So I think that weekend did feel really good. That whole month felt good. And then when the money actually went in, we were like, oh, amazing. And then very quickly it was like, oh shit, we have someone else's money.
Yeah, there is often that moment of you hit the milestone and then the next one immediately comes into your mind. And there's no break in between. So I can imagine the money hitting the bank account was the next one.
Yeah. And then so it was just like, we cannot spend this. Like the moment, anytime it just like changes, it was like, oh no, maybe we should pause, just pause everything going up for a little bit. And so yeah, we did try and just hold on and have the money in the bank account and just look at it for a bit.
The screenshots.
Yeah.
Account being full. No, I love that. But I know we've got 10 minutes left. So I want to wrap up with some advice that you can both share with people that are either thinking about doing this crazy thing and raising money or in the middle of it. So from your experience, what are the top 2 or 3 things that founders need to think about or prepare before fundraising?
Yeah, I would start by saying, and I definitely think upon reflection, there's so many things we could have done better. But I think what I'm really proud of that we did is we spent so much time validating the problem. We spent like hundreds of hours doing customer interviews. So I really advise anyone I speak to that's going through this journey is reach out to your network as much as possible. Ask people, ask them if you can pay them for their time. Most likely they won't take you up on that. They're more than happy to share their insights. If you've got someone that's, an industry expert that you want to pick their brain, reach out, ask them, because we had hundreds of conversations and that was just amazing people that were so willing to give us their time. And I think people underestimate how helpful your network can be. So yeah, that's my number one piece of advice, is spend so much time validating the problem and be so confident that you have a problem that you are the right people to solve.
It was 2, right?
Yeah, so Kat, one from you.
Oh, right. I thought it was 2 each. I think everyone's looking for executors. And so everyone can come with a good idea on the table, and often we can be secretive about what the plans are and what we might want to explain or do. It comes down to whether or not we can do it well, and be able to convince other people that we've done it better. And so being able to come to the conversation with proof that something has been done, and the iterative, I think, progress from the last conversation goes a long way in being able to have that continued conversation. And so, yeah, I think for us, being able to hear week on week the different conversations and challenges that we're hearing and trying to turn that into, I guess, features has then really helped with getting people excited for the product that we are building. And on the fundraising side, they're also excited to see the reactions of the people that have heard and told us what the challenges are. And so we've been able to keep them in the loop, and we hope that we can continue to do that. So yeah, come with an open mind and make sure that you're not sitting on the problem for too long and actually implement some things.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's both very actionable things that people can take away and do. So last couple of questions, but what is the one tip that you have for all of the founders who are in the middle of a fundraise, especially in this climate?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, I would say actually don't be too hard on yourself, because, and I saw this again with my partner going through it recently, is, you can walk away and have a really shit conversation where you just had no chemistry. Maybe the investor had not looked at your deck. You're starting from a really cold start. They don't understand your problem. And there's just no chemistry there. And you're probably never going to be the right fit anyway, because of course you want people that you really get along with, because you're building a very long-term relationship with this investor. So yeah, I'd say just don't be too hard on yourself. Not everyone is going to have a great, you're not going to have a great rapport with everyone, and you're going to completely bomb in some of your discussions as well. And I think something that I really did not very well was I would sit on it and I would just stew over, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, had a really bad conversation. And Kat was really good at pulling me up, going, get over it, doesn't matter, move on. So yeah, that's something that I think we can all be really too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, I think my additional 2 cents there is it is absolutely not too different from a job interview. You're going to have some good ones, you're going to have some bad ones, but often when candidates go to a job interview, they feel like they're fighting to justify themselves for the role, but really you forget that it's actually a mutual conversation where you're trying to find the right fit with each other. And so sometimes if it doesn't gel, it's not going to gel in the future. And so it's, you're just gonna pull all your hair out if you're trying to make it work, because if it's already a headache now, it's definitely gonna, once the pressure's on, it's gonna get way worse. So be clear about what it is that you want and need and stick to it. And trust that the process will find your way.
No, that's like both really, really good pieces of advice for people to take on, because it is hard, and people carry a lot of weight and not really think about letting some of it go. So no, I appreciate those pieces. As somebody who is fundraising right now, I appreciate those pieces of feedback from both of you. And last question, if you could go back and do it again, would you do anything differently? And if so, what?
God, I would do so many things different. I think that's my personality. I still sit and think about all the terrible mistakes I made. But I think also that's the nature of this space. Being a startup founder, you're someone who wants to constantly be better, do better, iterate, change things. So that's probably, I guess, just the way in which, you have to build a business. You have to constantly adapt and change for the future. So yeah, but if I had to pick one thing I would do different, it would probably be, I guess, being a little bit more open with what I didn't know. I think transparency can go a long way, as long as you show that you're willing to fill in those gaps or utilize the resources available for you. Because again, Kat and I have been great in utilizing every single resource that's been thrown at us to help us get better. So I think I probably could have been more transparent in what I didn't know, but showed how I was going to fill in those gaps along the way.
That's fair.
I just think it creates a better relationship.
Yeah, I think hindsight is one of those things where you sort of look back and there are always cringy moments where you're like, you could do that better. But part of, the being able to graduate out of that is almost learning the confidence to recognize that those are lessons that you needed to have. And so I don't want to be like, hey, I needed to make some of the mistakes then in order to avoid making bigger mistakes later, because we're still gonna it's still gonna be a rough road ahead. But if I could go back and give myself and Millie more confidence in ourselves and what we were doing, and just sort of celebrate more wins and trust that we were on the right path, I think there will be a lot less panic days off days where we're like, oh no, how did that go? Or it's just sort of I'd go back, save the time that we had in those moments and go get a coffee or go have a wine. So I wouldn't change the events that have happened, but I'd save a whole lot of time and just spend it living life a little more.
Yeah, no, that's again really, really good advice. And that hour has gone by very quickly.
So quick.
So no, thank you both of you for sharing so many nuggets of gold. This has been a really great conversation and an insight, especially from two women who have raised, women who are non-technical founders who have raised as well. It's been great to learn more about your story and where you've come from and where you're going to. Looking forward to seeing more of what Yesterday does in the future. And hopefully we can talk about another round in the future and how you've managed to close that as well, because I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come. So thank you both.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and yeah, we're really excited to follow your journey and absolutely love what you're doing.
No, thank you.
Fundraise.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like, if I have any questions, I will be sure to reach out. So, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the first episode of The Raise. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. You can stay up to date by hitting the subscribe or follow button, and please share this with anyone who could benefit from listening. See you on the next episode.